The first thing I did after I was reborn was go to the hospital for an abortion, and then I asked Alex for a divorce. I didn't ask for custody of our son, Leo, or for any other assets. All I wanted was a condo in a small seaside town. I made the small 2-bedroom apartment feel cozy, buying matching mommy and me sets for everything. At first, Leo thought all of this was for him and scoffed at it. It wasn't until he discovered the pink-themed kids' room filled with dolls and a closet full of beautiful princess dresses that he started to panic. He and Alex both thought I was sick, that I'd lost my mind. He cried as he confronted me. "Mom, I'm your real son. Why won't you even look at me? But you're so good to this imaginary daughter you've made up." He didn't know that she wasn't imaginary. I really did have a beautiful, sweet daughter. She lived on in my memories of my past life. 6 months after I settled in the seaside town, I got a call from Alex asking me why. Our divorce had been incredibly straightforward, as simple as sharing a meal. We both tacitly agreed that Leo would stay with the family, so we didn't fight over custody. Alex never asked why I suddenly wanted a divorce. He just went through the paperwork with a cold expression. I thought he didn't care, just like he had never cared about my feelings as his wife throughout our marriage. Now 6 months later, he was suddenly asking me why. At that moment, I was in the newly painted pink kids' room, hanging a portrait. A woman holding a little girl, sitting on a bay window seat. Outside the window was a turquoise sea and a stretch of windmills. Golden sunlight fell on the little girl's face, hiding her sickly pallor. I stared, lost in thought, at the little girl's face in the painting. Why? I wanted to say it was because we were supposed to have a daughter named Lily. She was beautiful and so well behaved, but unfortunately, she wasn't healthy. 70% of congenital heart defects can be detected during prenatal checkups, but she was in the unlucky 30%. You showed her a father's love for a short time, but you quickly lost patience with her frequent hospital stays and surgeries. You started staying out all night, using the excuse that the atmosphere at home was too depressing. While I was emotionally and physically drained from taking care of her, while I was waiting outside the ICU praying that death wouldn't take her, while I was alone signing the form to cease treatment and watching the doctor remove her oxygen tube, you were out having an affair with your mistress. You even brought Leo along, letting him happily call another woman mommy. But in the end, I said nothing. I just asked Alex, "Did you have breakfast with Ms. Zhou today?" A year after settling in the seaside town, I saw Leo. I had just gotten back from a trip to the national parks out west and was heading home, dusty and carrying a canvas backpack, when I saw the big and small figures standing in front of my building. I instinctively stopped, keeping my distance. As time went on, I thought about the father and son less and less. They didn't like me, and my feelings for them had been worn away by a lifetime of disappointment in my previous life. I thought that as long as I didn't seek them out, we would never see each other again in this life. Leo spoke first. Though he was only 6, he was precocious, his childish voice laced with hurt. "My school organized a parent-child trip here. Grandma and Grandpa said since I was in town, I should come see you. It's the polite and decent thing for a family to do." I nodded silently. Okay. He and Alex were so much alike, not just in their refined, handsome features, but even in the cold way they looked at me. It was identical. In my past life, when I broke down at Lily's funeral, when I climbed onto the roof of that 36-story building, they had both looked at me with that same coldness. Alex had said, "Chloe, don't make a scene." Leo had also said, "Mom, don't make a scene." Actually, a month after the divorce, Leo had contacted me. He'd heard from someone that I had moved to this seaside town and made a special call, telling me disdainfully, "They said after you moved to the coast, you decorated a special kids' room and replaced all the household items with parent-child sets? But I'm not going to live with you, so don't waste your time." I calmly replied with an okay, and then I heard him cheer on the other end of the line. "Wow, Tanya got me a new game console. Tanya's the best." Then he hung up in a hurry. Clearly, my departure hadn't affected his life at all. He always preferred his games to spending time with me, his biological mother, and he much preferred Tanya, who always played games with him and bought him consoles. But now the coldness on his face suddenly shattered. Those peach blossom eyes, so much like Alex's, instantly filled with tears. He bit his lip, glaring at me stubbornly. This time, it was my turn to meet his gaze with indifference. He couldn't hold on, and just before the tears fell, he turned to run away but tripped and fell with a thud. He lay on the ground for a moment without getting up, just looking back at me. He was always like this. Whenever I tried to get close to him, he would act annoyed and dismiss me with cold words. But the moment my attention shifted away from him, he would intentionally fall or pretend to be sick, making me feel sorry for him, leaving me helpless. This time, however, I watched him coldly, unmoved. His eyes widened in disbelief, his expression a mixture of confusion, bewilderment, and sadness. He burst into tears right in front of me. "You're a liar, a big liar. You promised you would love me forever and always be with me." Alex frowned and criticized me. "Chloe, he might be a child, but he understands everything. You shouldn't be so cold to him." His expression was serious, his attitude as condescending as ever. It had always been like this between us, less like a husband and wife and more like an employee and her boss. Most of the time he was home, he wouldn't initiate conversation. It was always me reporting the little details of my life to him. He was always indifferent to anything about me, but he would intervene when it came to Leo, even scolding me harshly in front of Leo and the housekeepers, showing no mercy. It got to the point where the slightest hint of his displeasure would send me into a spiral of self-reflection and anxiety, constantly wondering what I did wrong and what I needed to improve. Now, seeing that face again, I just felt utterly disgusted. "Have you forgotten what you said to me when we got divorced?" He had said he hoped I wouldn't disturb Leo's life in the future. Leo was still young and would quickly get used to not having me as a mother. It was for the best. That was the longest thing he said to me during the entire divorce process. Now he was saying, just as matter-of-factly, "I was being too idealistic back then. Leo is your only child. There's a bond between a mother and son. He needs you, and you." I cut him off. "But I don't need him." Alex was stunned into silence. Neither he nor Leo had ever seen me so stern. It seemed that even now he didn't understand the finality of my departure a year ago. Just as he would never understand in this lifetime that Leo wasn't my only child. I once had a daughter, even if I was the only one who knew it. On the day I was reborn, I dreamed that Lily was crying. She also called me a liar. She said, "Mom, you promised me that after I was gone, you would live a good life." Her crying broke my heart. I promised her. I said this time, Mom will definitely keep her promise. Between my promises to her and to Leo, I could only keep one. My love for Leo was once no less than my love for Lily. He was the child I had risked my life to bring into the world, my own flesh and blood. I had once looked forward to his arrival with so much excitement. Before he could even talk, just a sweet smile from him could make me forget all the hardships and pain of being Mrs. Gu. Back then, I was willing to give him everything, even my life, just so he could grow up happy and healthy. Alex didn't love me. Our story was simple. Childhood friends who, having reached a certain age without suitable partners, were set up by our elders. This simplicity once made me feel insecure. In our school days, I had seen with my own eyes what Alex was like when he loved someone. The young Alex was far more energetic and cheerful than he is now. Every time I saw him, he seemed to be smiling, a carefree smile when being scolded, a triumphant smile after winning a basketball game, and a joyful smile when he saw the girl he loved. When those peach blossom eyes smiled, they curved into crescents, like the warm sun in winter, making hearts flutter and capturing everyone's affection. Back then, he would brave the cold and heat to bring his beloved girl a handmade breakfast, release a sky full of lanterns for her, and fill the school field with flowers to declare his love in front of everyone. Passionate and wild. That girl was an academic star, winning awards in physics competitions and skipping grades to go abroad to continue her pursuit of physics. After she left, Alex seemed to become indifferent to everything. Before our wedding, I had asked Alex, "Will we really be happy?" He answered, "We will." Blinded by love, I ignored the indifference in his tone. I told myself that people grow up, they become more mature, and the way he loved would also become more mature. Until Tanya, a young and beautiful game designer, appeared by his side. Only then did I realize that Alex only knew one way to love. He started smiling while texting, paying attention to lipstick shades he never cared about before, researching women's perfumes, and staying up late with her to test new games. When I, worried sick because he hadn't come home all night, went to his office, I found him having breakfast with another woman, carefully peeling an egg for her, a treatment I had never received. At that time I thought, it doesn't matter if Alex doesn't love me. At least there's one person in this family who does. At least Leo loves me. I didn't know then that Leo didn't love me as much as I thought. This child would later stab my heart, one cut at a time. That day ended on a sour note. Given Alex and Leo's tempers, I thought they would definitely not come back. Unexpectedly, the next day, Leo appeared downstairs from my apartment again, wearing a small backpack. This time he was alone. When the building security called me, I was painting. A little girl in a princess dress, running freely across the beautiful grasslands of a western prairie. I didn't have any photos or videos of Lily. I was afraid that as time passed, I would forget what she looked like. So, what I did most often was paint her from memory, stroke by stroke, from infancy to the age of 5. When her life ended, I painted so many pictures, and they filled every corner of my home. But then I thought, how could my Lily only be in a hospital bed? So every now and then, I would travel to take pictures of beautiful scenery, and then paint her into those landscapes. This particular painting was going slowly. I had injured my right shoulder while horseback riding in the mountains, and it was still a bit difficult to lift my arm. So this painting had been in progress for a month. That was my first time riding a horse. When I picked the white horse, the wrangler hesitated and tried to persuade me otherwise, saying the horse had a bad temper, was wary of strangers, and had thrown several people. I smiled and said it was okay because the white horse was just so beautiful. Sure enough, halfway through the ride, the white horse acted up, suddenly buckled its front legs, and threw me onto the grass. Everyone in the group was startled. As her mother helped me up, a little girl worriedly used her small hands to gently brush the grass clippings off my face, asking in a sweet voice, "Ma'am, are you hurt?" I ended up taking lots of pictures of her and her mom. She reminded me of Lily. But actually, the farthest Lily ever got from home in her past life was this seaside town. At that time, her health was slightly better, and I had planned a family vacation. But Alex said he was busy, and Leo said he had to participate in testing a new game for Alex's company, so in the end it was just the two of us. Those few days were quiet and beautiful. During the day, I would teach her to paint in the room, and in the early morning and evening, we would go to the beach to collect seashells. She said that when she got better, she wanted to live in this place forever. That's why when we divorced, I only asked for this seaside condo. This is a home for me and Lily, and it has nothing to do with Leo or Alex. I didn't want Leo to set foot in this apartment at all. Without hesitation, I gave the security guard Alex's and his parents' contact information. A few minutes later, the security guard called again, saying that while he was contacting Alex, Leo had run into the complex and disappeared. After all, Leo was the child I had raised with meticulous care. I couldn't possibly let anything happen to him. I sighed, put down my paintbrush, and went downstairs to look for him. I searched the entire complex, breaking into a sweat, only to find him waiting at my door, a smug look on his face that said, "I knew you wouldn't leave me." I didn't say anything. As I opened the door, he darted inside like a proud little lion, head held high, and began to inspect his territory. He asked me which one is my room. "You must have bought me a game console, right? I'm going to my room to play games." I didn't answer. I told him to wait in the living room for Alex to pick him up, then sat back down at my easel to finish the painting. I had only made a few strokes when a loud crash came from the kids' room. I hurried over and saw the painting that had been hanging on the wall above the bed had fallen to the floor, the frame shattered. Spilled fragrance oil had completely ruined Lily's face in the portrait. Leo stood on the bed, looking at me helplessly. I don't like this painting. Why would you hang someone else's picture in my room? Why are you holding her in the painting?" I knew he probably just wanted to take the painting down and didn't mean to break it. I also knew he was just a child and I shouldn't get angry over things he didn't understand. But my tone was unavoidably stiff. "Didn't I tell you to wait for your dad in the living room? Stop touching things." He sensed my restrained anger, and his expression became vulnerable. Before, whenever I broke something, you would always ask if I was hurt first. I didn't answer, my gaze falling on the bedsheet he had dirted with his shoes, my brow furrowing uncontrollably. Get down from there. He remained standing on the bed, his eyes fixed on me. Mom, who is this girl you painted? Why did you paint so many pictures of her? Why is every painting in the house of her? He was still too young to hide the fear and unease in his eyes. He had seen all the paintings filling the house, the girl in them with features so similar to his own. Mom, why did the security guard and all the neighbors here say you don't have a son, only a daughter? I told them I was your son, and they called me a liar. They didn't believe me even when I showed them our picture together. This is my room, right? He jumped off the bed and, as if to prove something, yanked open the closet, only to freeze at the sight of it filled with princess dresses. Why did you buy so many dresses? Where are my clothes? Why aren't there any of my clothes? He rummaged through the closet and, finding nothing, stared at me with wide eyes, seeking an answer that would soothe him. I looked at his eyes, which were gradually filling with tears, and remained silent. In my silence, his tears fell one by one. He suddenly flew into a rage, crying as he pulled the princess dresses from the closet one by one and threw them onto the bed, sweeping all the stuffed dolls from the bay window onto the floor, trying to assert his place with a tantrum. Why did you put someone else's dresses in my closet? I don't like dolls. Why did you put so many dolls in my room? I don't like this bed or the blankets. This is a girl's bed. I don't like pink. Why did you make my room this color? Why are you holding another girl? Why did you hang a picture of you and someone else in my room? I don't like her. I hate her. I hate her. This time, I couldn't take it anymore. Leo, get out. This isn't your room. There is no room for you here. When Alex came to pick him up, Leo told him in a panicked voice, Dad, Mom's gone crazy. She's telling everyone she only has a daughter. When Alex and Leo came again a month later, their attitudes were cautious and gentle. Alex said, Chloe, you're sick. He had me video call relatives and friends, who all told me that the daughter I painted, the daughter I told all my neighbors I loved so dearly, didn't exist. She was just a figment of my imagination. They took out family photo albums, forcing me to reminisce with them. But our past was too thin, just like the half-empty photo album. There were barely any photos of the three of us together. Most were of Leo growing up, with a few of him and me mixed in. As he got older, perhaps due to a boy's natural inclination to align with the more authoritative figure in the family, who could provide him with better things, he saw Alex's cold and distant treatment of me, and became unwilling to take pictures with me. Now they were holding that photo album, which barely had any pictures of me, recounting past moments, desperately trying to convince me that I never had a daughter. I sneered, Are you saying I'm crazy? Alex shook his head. No, Chloe, you're just sick. He produced an operating room document, took my hand, his voice even choking up a little. Chloe, why didn't you tell me we were supposed to have another child? I looked at him in silence. His face showed guilt and regret. About Tanya, I can explain. It's not what you think. He said he only paid more attention to Tanya because he admired her talent, and being nice to her was just a way to manage a subordinate. His tone was gentler than it had ever been. Chloe, I know you had the abortion and divorced me because you misunderstood my relationship with Tanya. Afterward, you regretted it, and that's why you imagined you had a daughter. Chloe, it's my fault. I didn't handle things well. I didn't maintain a proper distance with my subordinate, which led to your misunderstanding and heartbreak, and caused you to get so sick. In the 12 years of our past life's marriage, I had never seen Alex speak to me with such humility. I stared at him with curiosity, as if I were seeing him for the first time. You have to understand, in my past life, when I sensed something was off between him and Tanya, he would only respond to my questions and probing with a cold retort. Chloe, are you sick? Even just 6 months ago, when he called to ask me why, he never answered my question in the end. Now that he believed I was truly sick, he suddenly found his voice, breaking character to explain his relationship with Tanya. He said, Chloe, you're sick. You need treatment. Let Leo and me be with you, take care of you, okay? I told him to take Leo and get the hell out. The second time Alex and Leo came, they brought a psychiatrist with them. At the time, I had just returned from Mexico a few days earlier. The doctor, whose last name was Lin, glanced at my neck and spoke in a casual tone, as if we were old friends. "What happened to your neck?" I touched the thin purple line on my neck and answered just as casually. "I had a little accident while parasailing in Cancun a few days ago. It was the last stop on my Mexico trip. I was parasailing, being towed by a motorboat high above the sea, when the tow rope suddenly snapped. I plummeted from dozens of meters into the ocean. Although I was wearing a life vest, the parasail's ropes tangled around my neck, trapping me with the harness. I couldn't surface. I struggled, gradually losing strength from lack of oxygen, and almost died in that sea. Luckily, the guy driving the motorboat jumped in and saved me in time. Thinking back on it now, it still feels terrifying." Dr. Lin didn't press for more details. He glanced at the painting on the easel, the paint still wet. Lily was sitting in a parasail, smiling at the blue sky and white clouds. He politely asked if he could see my other paintings. After I agreed, he carefully examined every painting in my house and then, holding one of them, asked me, "Can you tell me the idea behind this painting?" It was a bird's-eye view of a body of water. Lily was floating on her back, her arms outstretched with a smile, as if she were welcoming or trying to embrace something. I painted that after I went bungee jumping over the Gandaki River in Nepal. There were a lot of tourists bungee jumping that day. They were either nervous or excited, seeking encouragement from their friends and the staff. Only I was completely calm. A staff member joked with me in English, saying I didn't look like I was there for fun, but more like I was there to commit suicide, and that he was almost afraid to push me. He said that, but when he pushed me, he didn't hesitate at all. The wind rushed past my face as I plummeted, pressing against my eyeballs. The momentary feeling of weightlessness threw me back to the end of my past life, when I jumped from the 37th floor. Actually, my memories and sensations from that time were very blurry. In the blink of an eye, it was all over. But this time, the feeling of freedom in the fall was so clear. As I neared the water, I had a hallucination. I saw Lily's figure, faint and shimmering in the water. She was smiling and reaching out to me, wanting to hug me, but the moment I tried to hold her tight, she shattered into the sparkling ripples of the Gandaki River. I didn't answer Dr. Lin's question. Dr. Lin was very patient. He tried to coax me, attempting to analyze the logic behind my actions. "Chloe, when you had the abortion, it was just an embryo that hadn't developed any gender characteristics. Why did you believe it was a girl? Is it possible that you were projecting yourself onto it?" I laughed. "Are you saying I'm a narcissist?" "No." Dr. Lin shook his head. "You're feeling sorry for yourself. Is it possible that you transferred the resentment you feel for your husband onto the child? But after you had the abortion, you regretted it, so you created an imaginary girl based on yourself as a prototype. Similarly, it's not that you've stopped loving Leo. You love him too much, but you also resent him, so you can only pour all the love you have for him into this imaginary girl. But this little girl is too dangerous for you." He sighed softly. "Wild horse riding, parasailing, bungee jumping. Chloe, have you noticed that you're pursuing high-risk activities? This imaginary little girl is leading you to test the boundaries of death. If you don't open up and accept treatment, the consequences could be dire. Chloe, I want to help you." Alex chimed in from the side. "Chloe, accept the treatment. Let us help you take care of you, okay?" Leo also came forward, trying to take my hand, his attitude unprecedentedly docile. "I knew it, Mom. How could you suddenly stop loving me? It's because you're sick. Let us help you. Mom, can you paint a picture of me too? You've never painted one for me." I cut him off. "I have painted one for you. For your birthday last year, I gave you a portrait of yourself as a gift. My grades in school were always just average, nothing like the academic stars Alex liked. But I was very talented in art and got into one of the country's top art schools. Unfortunately, my parents always thought you couldn't make much money just by painting. They hoped I would get married soon after graduating from art school, so they wouldn't have to worry about me and could immigrate to New Zealand with my brother with peace of mind. I compromised, because the person they set me up with was Alex. At the time, I thought I can still paint after I get married. But I soon became pregnant with Leo, and household chores and raising him gradually took up all my time. Whenever I wanted to settle down and paint, Leo would start crying, and I would have to put down my brush to soothe him. So, I gradually let my skills rust. It wasn't until Leo's 5th birthday that I had a sudden inspiration to pick up my long-neglected paintbrush and paint a portrait for him. But he clearly preferred the game console Tanya gave him and tossed it aside without a second thought. Later, I found the painting under his small desk, folded into a small square, and used to prop up a wobbly table leg. Leo's voice trembled as he tried to defend himself. I didn't do it on purpose. I must have grabbed the wrong thing. I dismantled his excuse with a smile. No, you did it on purpose. Because that day, you were dawdling and refused to take a bath, so I confiscated your game console. And you did that to get back at me. You've always been like this. Whenever I don't give you your way, you hurt me by destroying the gifts I give you, by ruining my good intentions. Because you know I love you, that I care about you, and you know doing that will hurt my feelings. You want to hurt me. Leo's face turned pale, and he stammered, unable to say a word. I looked up at Alex. I had seen his subtle attempts at reconciliation for a while now. For example, in our past life, Leo's school never organized a parent-child trip. For example, with so many bodyguards and nannies in the family, how could they have let Leo run off by himself without being the least bit worried? And for example, both in his past life and since my rebirth, he had actually stopped wearing the clothes I bought for him a long time ago. From a certain day on, he, who had never bothered with his wardrobe, started buying his own clothes. Later, I found out they were all bought for him by Tanya. To make Tanya happy, he never touched the clothes I bought again, even switching his cologne to the leather scent she preferred. But these last few times he came to see me, he deliberately wore the clothes I bought for him and the woody fragrance I favored. I just didn't care. I didn't care why he suddenly wanted to reconcile after a year. I didn't care why he didn't just bring Tanya into the picture now that I was out of the way. Because I didn't care, I didn't call him out on it. It's just that this man was so used to being arrogant with me that even when seeking reconciliation, he couldn't let go of his pride. He just wanted to use Leo to soften me up and make me come back on my own. Now that he believed I was sick, he seemed to have suddenly found an excuse to humble himself before me. His attitude did a 180-degree turn. He instantly learned gentleness and compromise. It was as if, because I was a patient, I had suddenly become a fragile object in need of his protection. All his actions now had a great and selfless reason. It was all for my own good. He performed with such sincerity, I almost believed him. Alex, you say there was nothing between you and Tanya? Then why? Because she gets sick easily. Did you spend a fortune to find the finest jade, carve a Buddha statue with your own hands, and then climb the 9981 steps of the mountain temple on your knees to have a master bless it? Even when Lily was so sick in our past life, he, her father, had never done anything like that for her. And why did you use working overtime as an excuse to spend Valentine's Day with her? Why did you hug her? Why did you kiss her? Alex's face turned ugly. I smiled. Are you surprised that I know all this so clearly? Your son told me. The first time I heard Tanya's name was from Leo. Suddenly one day he started frequently telling me, Tanya is so nice. Tanya did this with Dad. Mom, why can't you be as good as Tanya? At first, it might have been unintentional, but later, it was clearly deliberate. As I've said, he was precocious. After realizing that hearing Tanya's name upset me, he would intentionally bring her up whenever I did something he didn't like. I knew that while he liked Tanya and the games, he didn't necessarily want her to be his mother. He just enjoyed revealing his father's intimacy with another woman as a way to punish and defy me. This behavior became even more pronounced in our past life after I had Lily. During my pregnancy, he would casually say things like, Mom is so fat and ugly, not like Tanya who is so skinny and pretty. While I was breastfeeding, he would carelessly remark, Mom's belly is so saggy and has so many stretch marks. Her clothes are so messy, covered in milk stains. She smells like sour milk. It's so gross. No wonder Dad sleeps in a separate room. When I was at the hospital with Lily for her surgeries, he would periodically reveal what Alex had given Tanya that day, or what Alex had done with Tanya the next. He would gleefully tell me how amazing Tanya was for designing a new game, meaning he had a new game to play, unlike me, who was so useless. After returning from a business trip with Alex, he would tell me where he, Alex, and Tanya had gone and what they had done, and how everyone said they looked like a family of three. He would show me pictures of the three of them together, asking me if they looked good. He thought he was being subtle, but every time he said these things, I could clearly see the malice in his eyes. It was the first time I had experienced the innocent cruelty of a child from my own son. He was like a demon, constantly whispering spells in my ear that would drive me mad. I knew that back then, many nosy relatives and friends would maliciously provoke him, saying that with a second child, I would only love Lily and not him anymore. I also asked myself if I had truly been unfair in how I treated him and Lily, leading to his outrageous behavior. But after much reflection, I was sure I hadn't. Even though I was constantly running between the hospital and home for Lily, I would check in on Leo every day, asking the nanny if he had eaten well and checking his homework. I would attend his parent-teacher conferences, even if I had been at the hospital for 48 hours without sleep, unless Lily was in surgery. I would force my exhausted body to go. In fact, before Lily was born, he didn't like my company. He always found me nagging and annoying, complaining that I was aimless and just hovered around him. He preferred to be alone in his room playing games. But when I stopped hovering around him and gave the attention and time he didn't want to his sister, he became unhappy. He could reject it, he could not cherish it, but I wasn't allowed to give it to anyone else. I don't know who he gets this selfish, rotten streak in his personality from. It wasn't until after my rebirth, when I left Alex without a second thought, and he pathetically came begging for a reconciliation, that I was certain. He's just like his father. That man, who was busy having an affair and figuring out how to divorce me while I was exhausted by Lily's illness and heartbroken by Leo's deliberate provocations. Why wouldn't I have wanted a divorce? I'm not a masochist, nor am I so love-struck that I can't live without Alex. But for Lily's sake, I couldn't. The cost of Lily's treatment was not something an ordinary income could cover. But if I were to divorce and leave Lily with Alex, given his attitude of preferring to spend time with Tanya over visiting Lily in the hospital, I couldn't trust him. Besides, Lily's heart condition might not have been able to withstand the shock of a family breakup. So I could only grit my teeth and hold on. I often wondered later, why could Alex love Leo but not Lily? Even though Lily was so beautiful, so well-behaved, facing illness and countless surgeries, she would always hold back her tears until she absolutely couldn't anymore. Even when she was scared being alone with just the caregiver at the hospital, she would always tell me to go get some rest. She missed her father and brother, and was confused about why they never came to see her, but she never asked, never said a word. At just a few years old, she was so mature it was heartbreaking. It was only after Lily died, when I found the long-prepared divorce papers in his study, that I understood. It was because her existence prevented him from asking me for a divorce. A man who asks his wife for a divorce while his daughter is fighting for her life, the public scandal he and Tanya would face, he couldn't afford to lose face. He couldn't get rid of me, so he took it out on Lily. Leo saw his indifference toward Lily and followed his example. Even though Lily adored her older brother, he wouldn't stay in the hospital for more than a moment to be with his poor sister. Even when I managed to drag him there, he would just sit with his head down, playing games, ignoring Lily when she tried to talk to him. And when I wasn't around, he would deliberately provoke Lily, just like he provoked me. The day Lily passed away was her 5th birthday. I specifically called Alex, begging him to come home that evening so our family of 4 could celebrate Lily's birthday properly. My birthday gift for Lily was a painting, the same one I repainted after being reborn, hung in the kids' room, and was later destroyed by Leo. Me holding her, sitting on the bay window seat, with the turquoise sea and windmills outside, and golden sunlight on her face, hiding her sickly pallor. Lily loved it. She kept it by her side, looking at it from time to time. But as we were about to light the candles on the cake, Alex still hadn't come home. I could see the disappointment in Lily's eyes. I ducked into the kitchen to call Alex, but no matter how many times I called, he didn't pick up. When I returned to the living room, still trying to figure out how to explain her father's absence, I heard 11-year-old Leo looking at the painting with contempt and disgust, saying with incredible venom, "So ugly, her face is as white as a ghost." At my school, Ugly girls like you just get bullied. No wonder Dad didn't want to celebrate your birthday with you. The color drained from Lily's face in an instant. I couldn't believe my ears. Had Leo been speaking to Lily so cruelly all this time when I wasn't looking? In all the years Leo had been growing up, I had never laid a hand on him, but this time, I couldn't stop myself from slapping him across the face. He clutched his cheek, looking at me in shock, and yelled at me furiously. Dad's on a date with Tanya. He's not coming back to celebrate this sicko's birthday, no matter how many times you call. From now on, I'm not celebrating her birthday either. Dad is going to divorce you and marry Tanya. I'm going to be a family with them, and we don't want this sicko, and we don't want you. Lily clutched her chest and collapsed on the spot. That day, as I carried her limp body into the ambulance, I prayed desperately that God would be merciful one more time. But after the doctors tried to save her, they told me her body couldn't possibly withstand another surgery. They advised me to let her go. I looked at the suffering Lily on the hospital bed, my mind buzzing, completely lost. I desperately called Alex, but he never answered. Later, I found out he was in Tanya's bed. In the end, I alone signed the consent form to stop treatment, watching as the doctors removed Lily's oxygen tube and shut down all the machines. Alex was the last one to arrive at the hospital. His parents, even the people from the funeral home, had arrived before he rushed in. He questioned me. Why didn't I wait for him? Why did I give up on treatment without his consent? I thought to myself, wait for him for what? Wait for him to crawl out of his lover's bed and put on a show of the doting father at Lily's bedside, just so people wouldn't say he wasn't there at his own daughter's death? For the sake of his reputation, my Lily had to suffer for a few more hours? I looked at him, then at Leo standing far away at the door of the hospital room. The father and son had the exact same cold expression. One was busy cheating while his own daughter was on the brink of death, not even there for her last birthday. The other had cruelly provoked his own sister to death. How could they still be so calm? Why didn't they shed a single tear? I suddenly felt that this father and son were terrifying. I know, this was all from my past life. It hasn't happened in this life, and it can never happen again. Perhaps I shouldn't judge a 6-year-old Leo for crimes he hasn't committed in this life. But I can't help it. I gently pulled my hand away from Leo's and looked at Dr. Lin with a smile. Dr. Lin, you're wrong. The little girl in the paintings isn't a dangerous presence for me. Alex and Leo are. If one day I go crazy, if I die, it will be those two who pushed me into madness and to my death. The third time Alex and Leo came, their attitude was once again forceful. At that time, I was preparing to leave for Iceland. Just as I was about to enter the elevator with my suitcase, Alex got out of another elevator and blocked my way. He threatened me, Chloe, if you still refuse to see a psychiatrist, I'll have no choice but to have you committed to a mental hospital. I looked at him amused. On what authority would you have me committed? We're divorced. You're not my legal guardian. There's no relationship between us. Ex-husband. Leo chimed in, well, I can, can't I? I'm your son. I glanced down at him. Unfortunately, you're not an adult yet. They were powerless against me. I turned to leave, but Alex reached out to stop me again, accidentally breaking the necklace around my neck. The necklace fell to the floor, and the locket's clasp broke open, revealing a tiny printed photo of Lily's portrait. Alex stared at the small portrait for a moment, finally unable to contain his temper. Since you decided to have the abortion yourself, you shouldn't have any regrets. I gripped the locket with a trembling hand, trying not to show any weakness, and slapped him across the face. He doesn't understand anything. He knows nothing. After I was reborn, I had hesitated, I had struggled. But at the end of my past life, Lily lay in her hospital bed in agony, crying and telling me, Mom, it hurts so much. It hurts so much. If there's a next life, can I please not come back to this world? I really had no choice. I put the broken necklace in my pocket, didn't spare Alex and Leo another glance, and walked into the elevator with my suitcase. Winter in Iceland has a stark, desolate beauty. Raging waves crash against the black sand beaches, the dark volcanic sand creating a sharp contrast with the white foam. Waterfalls, volcanoes, glaciers, fjords, the small island boasts a multitude of unique landscapes and wondrous sights. Because of its proximity to the Arctic Circle, the daylight hours in winter are very short. The sun hovers near the horizon, and the dawn blush seamlessly blends into the evening twilight. The pink and purple belt of Venus can linger in the sky for a long time. I brought a ton of expensive camera equipment with me. After landing at Keflavik Airport, I rented a car, planning to drive the ring road and chase the northern lights. Unfortunately, it was either clear skies with an aurora KP index below 1, or the weather was bad with thick cloud cover, so I never managed to get a good shot. On the last day of my trip, the forecast predicted a blizzard for the next evening, which meant roads might be closed for days. I had to give up the rest of my itinerary. I was disappointed not to have seen the aurora. Even though the KP index for that day was still only 1, the weather looked clear enough, so I decided to drive out that night to try my luck. I found an open, desolate plain in the wilderness and waited in my car until 3 in the morning, but still saw nothing. Finally, disheartened, I decided to give up. But sometimes fate likes to play tricks like that. Just as I started the car to leave, the aurora appeared. Green ribbons of light danced across the sky, flickering and changing, unpredictable, magnificent, and mysterious. I quickly grabbed my camera gear, set it up in the most open spot I could find, and started capturing this gift from nature. In the sub-zero temperatures, I stood outside watching the aurora for a while before I couldn't stand the cold anymore. I decided to take a short nap in the car and let the equipment shoot automatically. The necklace that Alex had broken was hanging from my car's rearview mirror. The lily in the locket was smiling at me. I looked at her face and smiled back. "Lily, look, Mom caught the northern lights for you." Lying in the car, watching the dancing aurora outside my window, it took me a long time to fall asleep. So when I woke up, it was already late, and the sky was light. A strong wind had picked up outside at some point. The spot where I had set up my camera gear was a bit far from the side of the road where I parked. The swirling snow reduced visibility, so much so that I couldn't even see my equipment from inside the car. I calculated the driving time back to Akureyri, and considering the blizzard forecasted for the evening, decided to just get out and brave the wind and snow to retrieve my gear. What I didn't know then was that Icelandic weather forecasts for blizzards aren't always accurate. They can often arrive earlier or later. When I got to where I had set up my equipment, I found that both tripods had been blown over, and one camera had been blown away by the wind and rolled somewhere out of sight. I fumbled around in the snow, which was now several times thicker than the night before, and finally found the broken camera. I was afraid the melting snow would ruin the SD cards, so I quickly took them out of both cameras and put them in my pocket. By the time I had packed up my gear and started walking back, my view was a complete whiteout, with visibility under 15 feet. The key to my rental car didn't have a car finder button, so I had to carry the 2 heavy cameras and tripods and rely on my sense of direction to head back to the car. I walked for a long time, much longer than the distance from my equipment to the car, before I realized I was lost in the premature blizzard. I tried to get my bearings, walking until I was exhausted. I eventually had to ditch the heavy cameras and tripods, but still couldn't find the car. I pulled out my phone to call for help, only to find I had no signal. I was alone, searching blindly in the howling blizzard. The raging storm grew more intense. The biting wind, carrying sharp ice particles, made it impossible to open my eyes. My pace slowed, and I could feel my body temperature dropping, my limbs growing numb and cold. I knew I couldn't stop, moving forward purely on instinct. In the end, I collapsed in the snow. I thought, I'm going to die in a blizzard in a foreign country. But I wasn't afraid. I even felt a sense of relief. I said in my heart, "I'm sorry, Lily. Mom didn't want to break her promise to you, but Mom really can't go on." Actually, Dr. Lin was right. I was sick. I had been testing the limits of death. After Lily died in my past life, I developed severe depression. Or maybe, I had already been sick long before that, when I discovered Alex's affair, when Leo was constantly provoking me, when I was shuttling back and forth for Lily's endless surgeries and hospital stays. Every day, the world felt gray. Everything around me was filled with malice. My husband and my son were so cold, and my daughter was so pitiful. I tried so hard, struggled, and was exhausted every day, yet I still couldn't see a way forward, not a single ray of light. But for Lily's sake, I held on, gritting my teeth, always putting on a brave face in front of her, pretending everything was fine, not letting her see the cracks in our family or the ugly truth about her father and brother. It wasn't until Lily died that all the suppressed negative emotions erupted, swallowing me like an abyss. Part of me told myself not to die, that I had promised Lily I would live on even after she was gone, while another part of me couldn't stop self-harming. At first Alex and Leo did feel guilty. They armed themselves with a calm demeanor, but they weren't truly unmoved by Lily's death. People are contradictory like that sometimes. They try to escape their own guilt while uncontrollably feeling the need to atone and make amends. They started putting on a brave face for me, just like I used to. Alex stopped seeing Tanya. Leo stopped saying hurtful things, pretending we were a happy, perfect family. But it had no effect on me. I still remembered their identical cold gazes at Lily's bedside. No matter how they smiled at me, no matter how gentle they were, in my eyes, they were still cold-blooded, terrifying and utterly repulsive, the most loathsome monsters in the world. The closer they got to me, the worse my condition became. I would uncontrollably cry late at night, lose my temper for no reason, and hurt myself. Soon they began to lose patience. They started to see me as an embarrassment, a burden. They started to revert to their old ways. Alex started staying out all night again. Leo went back to his cold, cutting remarks. The day I climbed onto the roof of the 37-story building, Leo yelled at me with a face full of annoyance. "It's all your fault that Lily died. It has nothing to do with anyone else. Our family has no history of genetic diseases. If you hadn't failed to give her a healthy body, she wouldn't have been sick, and she wouldn't have died." I stood on the edge of the roof, stunned. Was it? So it was my fault. I must have been careless about something during my pregnancy, and that's why Lily was born with a heart defect and had to suffer in this world. The thin thread that had been pulling me back from the brink of death snapped at that moment. I jumped from the 37th floor. Depression doesn't just disappear with rebirth. Even though I was given a second chance at life, those negative emotions were still there. The day I had the abortion, I even hoped I would just bleed out on the operating table and join Lily. But I dreamed of her. She was always crying, begging me not to die. I didn't want to disappoint her. That day, I went home and saw Alex and Leo, still living their lives so carelessly. They didn't understand anything. They knew nothing. Only I knew everything from my past life. Only I carried all the pain. Only I remembered their sins and their repulsive faces. So I ran away from those two monsters, Alex and Leo. But it wasn't enough. The negative emotions were still there. The pain and guilt were still there. I didn't want to break my promise to Lily, so I clung to her memory, constantly reminding myself of my promise to her, as a way to fight my depression. That's why I decorated a room for her, pretending she was with me. That's why I painted so many portraits of her, almost to the point of madness. That's why I traveled everywhere, to see the world for her. I tried to pretend that everything had changed, that everything was getting better. I tried to pretend that I was already overcoming my negative emotions. But I still couldn't stop myself from testing the limits of death, time and time again. Every time I did one of those high-risk activities, I would lie to myself and say it was what Lily would have wanted. But really it was what I wanted. Now, the death I had been longing for had finally arrived. I felt a sense of peace in the whiteout of the snowstorm. I slowly closed my eyes. Beep. Beep beep. Beep 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 beep. A continuous car horn suddenly blared through the blizzard where visibility was zero. The piercing sound cut through the wind and snow, drilling into my ears, relentless and annoying. In the constant blare of the horn, I fought a long battle with the dark, negative part of myself. I really wanted to give up. I really wanted to give up. But then I thought of Lily. Finally, I opened my eyes, struggled to my feet from the snow, and felt for the tripod I had thrown away earlier, realizing I had been walking in circles. I used the tripod as a crutch and, with limbs nearly numb from the cold, crawled with all my might toward the sound of the car horn. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. When I finally found the car, I realized it hadn't been far at all, maybe 100 yards at most. As I shivered and opened the car door, how can I describe the incredible scene I saw? No matter how many times I think back on it, I believe it was Lily's spirit that saved me in that deadly blizzard, guiding me to a path of survival. Because it was impossible. The heavy tripod I had placed in the passenger seat must have fallen toward the driver's side due to the car shaking in the blizzard. The necklace I had hung on the rearview mirror had somehow fallen and wrapped the tripod around the steering wheel, pressing down on the horn. In the locket, amidst the incessant honking, Lily was smiling at me. In that moment, tears streamed down my face. Epilogue. After I got back to the car that day, my phone got a signal. I called for rescue, and half an hour later, the Icelandic search and rescue team arrived and took me to a local hospital. Fortunately, my frostbite wasn't severe. I was discharged after a few days and returned home. After surviving that blizzard, my depression seemed to have suddenly cured itself. I always knew this seaside town was beautiful, but for the year I lived here, I had been living in a daze, unable to feel anything. Even when I traveled, none of the beautiful scenery truly registered. But after returning from Iceland, everything suddenly looked different. The giant windmills in the distance turned lazily, the turquoise sea gently washed over the golden sand, and even the sunset glow on a rusty, wrecked boat was beautiful enough to make you stop and stare. The world was no longer gray, it was filled with so much color. I still live here, I still paint, and I still travel, but I no longer intentionally do dangerous things. I started getting into social media, posting my paintings of Lily and some of my travel photography online. It gained a lot of traction, and I suddenly became an up-and-coming painter and photographer with many followers. A year later, someone contacted me about holding an exhibition of my work. I agreed. The theme of the exhibition was, "An Angel Was Here." It featured all of my portraits of Lily. On opening day, a surprising number of people came, including Alex and Leo. Although I didn't pay them any mind, they had actually been harassing me continuously. When he realized he couldn't force me into psychiatric treatment, Alex changed his strategy. In both his past and present life, during our marriage, he never once sent me flowers or any surprises. Now he was trying to use those tactics to lure me into remarrying him. I scoffed at the idea. As for Leo, he was incredibly jealous every time he saw me bring something new into the house for Lily. Before, when I loved him, he seemed to prefer his games. But now, no matter how many games Tanya bought him, he would just tell her to get lost. Alex had fired her too. Now, more than games, he seemed to want my motherly love. He cried and said to me, "Mom, I'm your real son. Why won't you even look at me? But you're so good to this imaginary daughter you've made up." Then a week ago, they suddenly stopped. I thought they had finally gotten tired of it, annoyed and given up. But now here they were at my art exhibition. Seeing my guarded expression, Alex gave a bitter smile. "You don't have to be like this. We're not here to cause trouble." He stared at the closest painting, Lily in a blizzard, smiling like an angel. Alex's eyes suddenly became moist. "Chloe, I've been having the same dream over and over again lately. I dreamed that we had a daughter, and her name was Lily." Leo also looked up, his eyes red from crying, and asked me, "Mom, I had that dream too. Was it real?" I looked at the father and son coldly and said nothing. That day, with red eyes, Alex and Leo carefully looked at every single painting in the exhibition. The last painting took up an entire wall. Under the magnificent Icelandic aurora, Lily grew white wings and flew towards the sky. She was my angel. She was here. Alex and Leo stood before the painting for a long time, and after that, they never appeared in my life again. Bonus chapter. When Leo was 11, Chloe remarried and soon had a daughter named Sunny. The day Sunny was born, Leo climbed to the rooftop of a 37-story building, demanding to see Chloe. Alex looked at him with some impatience and said, "Leo, don't make a scene." In that instant, both father and son froze. They both thought of the dream, of their past life, of Chloe teetering in the wind on the 37th floor ledge, and how they had said the same thing to her. Don't make a scene. The spray of blood from Chloe's fall and Lily's pale face at her death had been Alex's recurring nightmare for years. Chloe's assessment of him was spot on. He was pathetic. He had always found Chloe too boring, too quiet, too lacking in presence. She repeated the same tasks at home every day, wore similar clothes, and lived like a piece of background scenery. It wasn't until after the divorce, when Chloe left without a backward glance, that he realized his feelings for her. She was like a quiet rain, seeping into every part of his life without him even noticing. Once she was suddenly gone, a giant void appeared in his heart, impossible to fill. He would call her name instinctively when he couldn't find something. He would turn around, half expecting to see her waiting behind him. After one night of waking up from a drowsy sleep and reaching for an empty space beside him, the longing for her attacked his senses like a ferocious virus. He had to get her back. Back then, he didn't understand anything. He knew nothing. He thought he had hidden his affair with Tanya so well that he could pretend nothing had happened. Chloe loved him so much, he thought, that if he just lowered himself a little, she would come back without hesitation. He didn't know that Leo had told Chloe everything behind his back. He knew even less about what he had done in his past life. He couldn't understand why Chloe looked at him with such cold, mocking eyes, as if he were something disgusting, until he had that dream. In the dream, after Chloe's death in his past life, he had the same sudden realization, finally understanding his feelings for her. Guilt, heartache, longing, the intense emotions nearly drove him mad. He knew he had to do something. He had to do something. So he took revenge on Tanya. He kicked her out of the company, pushed her to a dead end, burdened her with debt, until she had to sell her body to survive. In the end, she contracted a disease and came after him with a knife. As she frantically plunged the knife into his heart, she screamed, "Did I force you to cheat? Did I force you to sleep with me? It was you. You're the pathetic one who can't keep it in his pants. What right do you have to blame everything on me?" Yes, he was that kind of disgusting person, always shifting blame, always running from the truth. Just like he knew that Lily's congenital heart disease was very likely because Chloe had been traumatized by discovering his affair during her pregnancy, leading to Lily's poor health. But he didn't want to admit it, so he ignored Chloe's pain, ignored Lily's suffering, and used the affair to numb himself. Even on the day Lily died, he didn't want to admit he was wrong. He blamed Tanya, saying it was her soft body that held him back, that she had secretly set his phone to silent, which is why he missed Chloe's calls and Lily's last birthday. He blamed Chloe for signing the consent to stop treatment on her own, for cutting Lily's life short, preventing him from seeing her one last time. It was all their fault. He was not at fault. He had always twisted the facts like this to convince himself. So Chloe was right. He truly was a terrifying monster, repulsive and unrepentant. He deserved not to win back Chloe's love. He was unworthy of it. He never dared to see her again. It wasn't that he truly wanted to give up on Chloe. He actually wanted to keep pestering her. But he was afraid of her cold gaze, a gaze that reflected all his darkness and left all his filth exposed. So for all these years he controlled himself and controlled Leo, not allowing himself or Leo to disturb Chloe. He also blamed Leo, blaming him for provoking Lily to death in their past life, blaming him for ultimately pushing Chloe to her death, even though he had never guided Leo correctly or stopped his malicious behavior. But he could still deceive himself into believing he was not at fault, that everything was the fault of an 11-year-old boy. In the past life, after Chloe died, Leo himself developed severe depression. Chloe had said Leo's rotten nature was just like his, and she couldn't have been more right. Just as he only learned to repent after Chloe's death, Leo only realized how much he loved the mother he had constantly tormented after she was gone. Leo started to be like Chloe had been, crying for no reason, throwing tantrums over trivial things, and self-harming if not watched closely. And Alex watched all of this coldly, with no intention of getting involved. In his past life, Alex didn't know what happened to Leo after he died. But in this life, after they both had the same dream about their past lives, Leo developed the same severe depression as he had in the past. He would cry and scream, wanting to see Chloe. He would clutch his chest and ask Alex, "Dad, my heart hurts so much. Do I have a heart condition like my sister? If I get a heart condition too, will Mom and my sister forgive me?" But every time they went to the hospital for a checkup, the results were always normal. When he got a little older and understood what psychosomatic meant, he stopped asking Alex that question. But he still fussed about wanting to see Chloe. Since Alex was watching him, he could only stalk Chloe's life through the internet and other people. After finding out Chloe had a new boyfriend, He started provoking Alex just as he had once provoked Chloe. He would deliberately tell Alex where Chloe had gone with that man, what gifts she had received from him, that they had kissed, that she had accepted his proposal. Chloe was getting married. He tirelessly recounted to Alex how happy Chloe was after leaving them. He was punishing himself, and he was torturing Alex. In one bout of heartbreak after another, Alex finally understood how Chloe must have felt facing Leo back then. And he finally understood why Chloe had been so resolute in abandoning her son. He was a despicable demon just like him. The day he learned Chloe was getting married, Alex nearly went mad. He wanted to rush to her, grab her, and ask, "How could you get married? How could you fall in love with someone else? Have you forgotten Lily?" But he restrained himself. Even without an invitation, he sent a respectable wedding gift. When he learned she was pregnant and had another daughter, Alex, though heartbroken, was no longer as agitated. It was Leo who made a huge fuss. But that day on the 37th floor rooftop, after both father and son were stunned by his own outburst of "Don't make a scene," Leo came down from the ledge on his own and never mentioned wanting to see Chloe again. They looked at Chloe's social media together. A fan asked her, since she had painted so many lilies, why she named her daughter Sunny instead of Lily. She replied, "Lily is Lily and Sunny is Sunny." Others might not understand, but Alex and Leo did. Sunny was not a replacement for Lily, not someone to fill the void Lily left. Chloe was a good mother. She would never favor one child over another. Later, Alex invested half of his wealth in philanthropy, establishing a charitable foundation for pediatric cardiovascular diseases. And as Leo grew older, he repeatedly replayed the memories of his malicious self from the dream about his past life. The truth was, although he liked games and liked Tanya who designed them, he never wanted Tanya to be his mother. At first, he just wanted to use this to rebel against Chloe's rules. Later, he just hated that most of Chloe's energy was focused on Lily. He was afraid that, just as people said, she would stop loving him once she had a sister. His 11-year-old self in his past life probably knew that deliberately provoking Chloe and Lily was wrong, and he didn't want them to die. But once malicious words become a habit, they tend to slip out. So he became very quiet. After getting into college, he didn't choose finance. He chose to study medicine, specializing in pediatric cardiology, and spent his holidays volunteering at a children's hospital. He and Alex were both trying to atone in their own ways. Many years later, Leo finally became a qualified pediatric cardiac surgeon. He spent almost every day at the hospital, either treating patients or performing surgery. He pushed himself to the limit, as if only by curing more children could he wash away the guilt in his heart. Later, he met a 5-year-old girl. She was beautiful and sweet, suffering from the same congenital heart disease as Lily. Leo was her surgeon. The surgery was on the little girl's birthday. The operation lasted 20 hours and was a success. Leo walked out of the operating room exhausted but with a smile on his face, and then he just collapsed. Cardiac arrest. He passed away with a smile. The end.